on House Bill 420 is Mr. Mark Maurer from here in Columbus with Buckeye Institute.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I am Mike Maurer from the Buckeye Institute. I'm director of the Center for Transparent and Accountable Government. I have prepared written testimony for you, but it takes a good performer to read written testimony and do it convincingly. I'm going to spare you that. I am not a good performer. What I am going to do is extemporize, not that I'm any better at that, but it'll be a little bit quicker. Transparency we see as a good government issue. It passed the House in its current form, 94-0. There's nothing very onerous, nothing very complicated here. We would hope that it would gain the same support from the Senate chamber. I'm intrigued, if you do not already know it, but one of the main examples of transparency today is a federal government website called usaspending.gov that was a result of a covert Obama bill. You all know the name of President-elect Obama. You may or may not know Republican Senator Tom Coburn, who is on the other side of the political ideological spectrum. This is not controversial stuff. In fact, anti-tax activist Grover Norquist, whom you've heard of, is a supporter of this, and so is Ralph Nader, who is a consumer activist, someone who believes in using government as a tool to better people's lives. I've attached to my testimony a couple of references, a few websites, including ours, and also one that is a little bit larger and national scope called fiscalaccountability.org. I would encourage you to take a look at that. If this topic interests you, you'll see a lot of examples, a lot of states that either do legislative action or executive action that put information up on their websites that is remarkably useful. I'm a former community news reporter, and I did what I call eat your vegetables reporting, city councils, school boards, budgets, the kind of stuff that makes people's eyes glaze over. It's accounting, it's information technology, but it can be remarkably useful. One attached to this is a press release from Auditor Taylor's office speaking of something called XBRL that's related to XML. You may have no idea what that is, you probably don't, but it's the computer language that is behind essentially every website, every blog. It's what allows things to be transmitted to your BlackBerries. And there's a burgeoning technology that is not that complicated. You all have young students in your offices who know this stuff and can make it work. And all this bill will really in the end do is begin the process of OBM and other agencies beginning to adapt information that they are already generating on computer in digital format and putting it into a format that can be readily ported into other formats and computer services. If you're familiar with Craigslist, you read that, it's a line of text talking about where an apartment is, but some clever college student can take that XML language and they can tie it to Google Maps, and all of a sudden you've got a map showing you where apartments are available, and that helps you sort things out. Similarly, you'll be able to port budget information to your districts, to school districts, different regions of the state, to the Department of Development. Senator Cafaro was asking how many things were subject to the 35% threshold. You know, you're asking questions like that all the time, and somebody has to go check it out. If you port this into XML in a machine-readable language, you're going to get those answers much more quickly in a format that is much more useful for you. I attached a couple of other articles in here. They're mostly about initiative and referendum and whether we can trust the voters with this kind of information and trust citizens with it. You'll see examples in here of people behaving well or people behaving poorly. But in the end, I would suggest that this is, as I said at the beginning, not onerous, not controversial, and I think it deserves your full support. You mentioned the sub-bill. I would caution you that you're likely to be told by the bureaucracies that urge you to resist that language. It's basic data, put it out there in web format, make it available to the public, so all of these creative people that are out here working every day on their blogs or whatever they're doing, these internet billionaires who come up with a clever idea and enable tens of thousands of people to participate and give you the good information that you need to do your job well. Lastly, I distributed a pledge that we developed, and you probably all, or most of you remember all this in case this term, will have received a copy of this in the mail. It talks about many of the things that I've spoken to you about here. Is government information machine readable? Can a computer display it? And I think if you read that over, you'll find that most of the things we discuss in there are not objectionable. You might even find them interesting, even though they are sort of an accounting nature. If that intrigues you, then all the better. If you're interested in signing the pledge, all the better still. I'm going to be spending the next year talking with as many different forms as I can to promote this concept because, again, we think it's useful, we think it's important to how government is organized, and frankly, we think it will make your lives easier.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Maurer, for the testimony. I was intrigued by one of the press releases you attacked, one of the stories you attacked about the Old Kansas schools and their hunt for superintendent. And it strikes me that there may be some things that are better off not being publicized if you intend to attract best candidates for a position who, require some protection that they won't be released from their current job or some of those that they're looking for another job. How would you answer people that say, maybe there are some things that shouldn't be so transparent in the early stages?
I'm not sure if we mean the early stages of, for example, job search. Yeah, I'm a big supporter of privacy, and privacy is kind of the flip side of this. And that's a little bit of what you're addressing. If any of you were out looking for work, you would not necessarily want that to be known prematurely. If I'm out looking for work, I may not want that to be known prematurely. That's what the Olentangy School Board was addressing. It's perfectly logical, makes perfect sense. I frankly agree with it. The flip side of it, though, is that you can look at salaries. People in the private sector are not obligated to report their salaries. They might be better off if they did. People in the public sector can make the same argument. My salary shouldn't be out there because people in the private sector get to keep their salary private if they choose to. But on the other side of that, you have the taxpayers, you have the public who are paying those salaries. And if they don't have the information, how can they judge whether they're getting fair value? Getting the resumes of people who apply to superintendent jobs, to any public jobs, is a staple of community news coverage. I can't answer the policy question for you about whether that should be disclosed and when, but I can say that what the Olentangy School Board did, while it's defensible, while it's logical, while it makes perfect sense, P.G. O'Rourke is a humorist. He describes this kind of thing as pinning a kick me sign on the backside of the majesty of the law. They're playing games to not disclose information. Anybody who is applying for a job submits a resume. The only reason they are not accepting resumes is because once they do, it becomes a public record. So I think the proper response to this situation is to either change the law or to respect what the law calls for. Does it cause you to recruit fewer candidates or lesser qualified candidates? In the end, I suspect not. We may not like public scrutiny and public accountability, but it seems a basic principle that we are better off when we have it.
Paul, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Maurer, I guess to your last comment, I would say we don't know if it discourages people because they never apply. So there is no empirical evidence that would suggest that we would still get as many people applying because most likely those people who are not going to take the chance of having their interest in another job being disclosed are not going to subject themselves to that situation to begin with. Therefore, we have no way of knowing whether we get the same level of applicant. So just a comment.
Fair enough, sir.
Seeing no other questions, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 420. Is there any other business coming before the committee? No, stand adjourned.